Miami was blown out early by Boston, looking flat, disinterested, and outmatched. A second straight disappointment as the Celtics close the gap in the Eastern Conference Finals. Can the Heat figure it out in Game 6? Or are they on the verge of making the wrong kind of history? We break down what went wrong, who struggled most, and answer your questions on today's playoff edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Dave Ramil. However you might be tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today, download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, recording this immediately following the Heat's blowout loss to the Celtics. 110-97 is the final score. Just a brutal loss for the Heat, whose 3-0 series lead is now 3-2. This thing felt over in the first 5 minutes. The Heat played like it too. They played like it was over. Boston got out to a 16-point lead in the first quarter. Never really close after that. The Heat let go of the rope. There's no other way to say it, David. They looked like the Celtics did in Game 3, right? I'm not shocked that the Heat lost this game in Boston. I am shocked, however, in how they lost. What were your feelings watching this one?
Similar. I was shocked because we've seen this team function so well when they lean into the intangibles, right? The grit, the tenacity, the willingness to never die. And they looked like they were dead. They looked like that similarly in the second half of Game 4. And tonight it was much more consistent. You thought they'd come out with a better effort. You thought that it would show at some point when they cut the lead down to 10, 12, something close to that maybe they'd be able to go on another run. But they just didn't. And you have to give credit to Boston. They continue to play well. They have been the better team over the last game and a half. Starting in that midway through that third quarter, they just figured it out. They've been much more physical, denying the ball, very good defending three-point shooters. Putting Jason Tatum on Jimmy Butler has been a game changer. Butler looks hurt again, or at the very least,
doesn't look right.
He just does not look good.
Yep.
He does not have that aggression.
Tentative. Yep.
And look, that was across the board too. Many players it seems like the size of Boston has finally caught up to Miami's undersized lineup. You know, they're kind of pump faking every time they get even a little space to drive towards the rim, or if they have a little space from the perimeter. And then Boston is doing an excellent job closing out. We saw Robert Williams going out there swatting Jimmy Butler, doing the same thing to Kyle Lowry, smothering Bam Adebayo. They can't catch him in pick and rolls anymore and attack that the way they did game 1 through 3. Miami shooters just not able to knock it down. So a lot of different things there. I guess the overall takeaway is that Miami looked really flat, and I am concerned that I don't know if they can find a way to muster whatever necessary energy is there to steal Game 6. They have to win. We'll do 6.
We'll do the must-win thing. We'll do the panic meter segment. We'll get to that, but I do want to just talk about what happened in this game a little bit more because, look, the Celtics, like I said, they looked like the Celtics of the regular season. They shot 39% in the regular season three-point range. Over these last 2 games, they're shooting 40% from three-point range. This is what the Celtics are. If Heat fans want to chalk this up to hot shooting for Boston, sorry, that's not it. This is regular shooting for Boston. What has been happening in these last 2 games. This is normal for them. The problem is for Miami is that they are looking like regular season Miami and not playoff Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler was a no-show. Bam Adebayo was terrible. We will hand out blame pie to them, and they're both going to get some big slices of that. But to your point, what you were saying earlier, that offense that looked so crisp, so decisive, we know exactly where we want, what buttons we want to push, what levers we want to pull, what areas in Boston's defense that we want to peck at. Get that switch onto Derek White. If Peyton Pritchard is in the game, we're going to attack him too. And it's not that they're not trying to do that. It's that they haven't really figured out how to do it because Boston's defense has ramped up in a way that they're doing a better job covering those things up. And Miami, the team that all playoff longs has had a plan B and a plan C and a plan D and a plan E, don't have that right now. It's attack, it doesn't work, and settle for a bad jumper. And that's what these last 2 games have basically been. So yeah, if I'm the Heat, I am worried right now because this to me was not make or miss stuff. The Celtics have been the better team on nearly every front the last 2 games. The fact that it's 3-2 right now makes sense. The point differential right now per game in this series right now is just plus 1.8 for Miami, a team that was up in this series 3-0, basically even. Like these teams through the 5 games are basically even. And over these last 2 games, Boston has been far and away the better team, considering that these 2 have been blowout losses for Miami.
Yeah, so much to kind of pick out here.
Well, let's do it. Let's do the panic meter thing right now. Let's do it. Where are you at? 1 to 10 scale.
6, still 6, and yet confident that Miami will.
Confidence 6.
No, confidence 6, but confident that they can put it behind them. I thought, look, we heard Jimmy talk about, there's no momentum in Boston's favor. I'm going to go have a couple beers, whatever. We've debated that. We had a couple shows. We talked to Howard Beck about it. National media kind of, on the same side as thinking, well, you know what? They'll have a better effort in Game 5 than they did in Game 4. That was not the case. It is there. Look, Boston has done things very well. Miami has not. Boston has taken away all the things that Miami does well, and yet somehow we have to mention they're without Gabe Vincent. It kind of forces them to juggle their rotation a lot. Kyle Lowry starting.
It was sort of a late thing. Gabe Vincent went through shoot around on Thursday morning. They ended up elevating Kyle Lowry back in the starting lineup. I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, it was important to mention.
Yeah, no. So I think with that, if you can get Gabe back in Game 6, and it's not to say that he's the most important, but he has certainly been a stabilizing factor, and his offense has been great. Yeah, he was missing out there, and especially because Kyle was struggling. He was not able to or willing to get a shot.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so Reggie Miller had mentioned that he was like on the broadcast that he was like holding one of his fingers or something. Maybe there was something, but there was a play in the first quarter early on, like the first 4 minutes. He comes off that screen the way that Gabe Vincent has the entire playoffs, especially after Tyler Hero went down. Gabe Vincent likes to come off those screens, green light, pull up, shoot the ball. Make or miss, doesn't matter. In this series, mostly it's been makes.
The threat.
Kyle Lowry comes off that screen, gets into that mid-range spot that he really likes. That's kind of his sweet spot. And then just tries to squeeze this pass into Kevin Love. That was through 3 defenders, which is easily deflected. And it's like one of Miami's 3 turnovers in the first 3 minutes. It was like that Kyle Lowry tentativeness is not what they needed. And Kyle Lowry before the game was talking about, hey, I need to be aggressive. He's like, I'm going to do the same thing that I always do, but probably be a little bit more aggressive. And then he comes out and he's tentative. And Jimmy Butler all game tentative. Bam Adebayo couldn't really get to his spots, like settling for weird post-ups. Like Bam Adebayo is not a post-up player. I don't know when he's ever been a post-up player. There was a moment there in the third quarter, like a 2-minute stretch where they were getting him on the roll, and he was making plays out of that short roll, pocket passes at that free throw line jumper to get him there. And I was like, oh, this is kind of what they needed to see. But by then it was too little too late, and he didn't even play most of the fourth quarter when Spo went with the bench unit. So I don't know if maybe that's something that they figured out in terms of getting Bam on the move a little bit more, but there was just no answers offensively. And I think a lot of it does start with Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, that's fair. So he probably should come off the bench, again, assuming that Gabe is healthy. I think we've also seen that Kevin Love is unplayable in this series other than as a backup center. And I think that's probably his best role. We talked about it before the game. A little surprised that they continue to keep him in the starting lineup. I understand that probably without Gabe there, you need to have Caleb come off the bench. He can't start right away. I suggest, honestly, and I texted you about this.
Well, I know you're going to say.
All right.
That's a great tease. Game 6 starting lineup adjustments. I think we should see a change. I'm with you. You and I disagree on what that change is going to be. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to Blame Pie on the other side of this. But first, David, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's so easy to find the event you're looking for if you happen to be in town and you just want to catch something while you're there. Just look up Gametime. Really easy to use. You can get all the baseball games in an area, concerts, comedy shows, whatever you might be looking for. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. You can see exactly where you're sitting, so you know that you're not going to get any kind of obstruction in front of your seats. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, you can just create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Well, that smell is a smelly smell of another smelly loss, David. It's time to hand out some blame pie. We've talked about the main culprits in this one: Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry. That's not going to be a surprise. But I want to start with Erik Spoelstra. You were mentioning the starting lineup change that did not really happen, at least not the one we expected. Kyle Lowry being elevated to starting point guard only because Gabe Vincent was out.
Right.
I was shocked that we saw Kevin Love starting at the 4. I am a Kevin Love guy. I think a big part of Miami's run has been Kevin Love being reinserted into the starting lineup. He has been awesome and very important for this postseason run. But this is not the series for him. The Heat were being outscored by a point, despite all the blowouts before these last 2 games. They were being outscored by a point with Kevin Love in the game, and they were outscoring the Celtics by 25 points with Caleb Martin in the game. They talked a big talk after game 4. Hey, we need to come out early and set the tone and all these things. What do we always say about Caleb Martin? Energy guy, sets the tone, all these things. Okay, well, if you want to do it early, what better way than to put Caleb Martin in that starting lineup and bench Kevin Love? And like you said before, this ain't the Cody Zeller series either, right? He's having a hard time keeping up with all this. He's not been very effective. Kevin Love coming back in as a backup center behind Bam Adebayo stretches Robert Williams out. It was right there. I thought it was kind of the easiest adjustment and frankly a no-brainer, right? And I'm surprised. I am honestly shocked we didn't see that adjustment from Erik Spoelstra in this one.
I think it's still part of the rotation. Like, you want to be able to save save Caleb, because he is the best Jimmy replacement at this point. And I know their minutes have coincided a lot in this series, as well they should. And at the same time, without ball handlers, you're going to rely on both of them. And I think the two-way exertion has been a lot for their 3 players, Caleb, Bam, and Jimmy. I think it's taken too much out of them. It's not to say that they're not capable of it, but I think it's just
there's no other options.
Yeah,
I mean, they have to play. I mean, whether
Right.
you're not coming off the bench or not, you're playing those minutes and you're doing those things. I hear what you're saying, and look, I'm not saying that Spo did it without reason. He has been very reluctant to make any changes to the starting lineup because he is so keen on Caleb coming off the bench. He likes that in that role, and like you said, it gives Jimmy a break and all these things. But is he being a little too cute about it? In other words, if the obvious thing is, hey, just start your best 5, the guys that make sense, and if you need to set the tone early, just do that, and then figure out different rotation patterns later on to get Jimmy a break somewhere else. But I felt like Spo was being a little too cute about it.
Yeah, maybe. But it's just my concern that you can't. You got a guy like Robert Williams. He can exert himself in whatever limited minutes. Horford, whatever points that those 2 players generate are found money. In Miami's case, you're asking your 3 best defenders to also be your 3 best scorers and your only scorers, really, because you can't count on points from Max Strus, Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love. Duncan was found money today, and it still wasn't enough for Miami. Haywood Highsmith. And I think that's the answer to your starting lineup.
Wait. I'm sorry. Before you get to the Highsmith thing, though, because you mentioned something. Wait, are you like anti? Were you not in favor of benching Kevin Love for Caleb Martin? Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know that. I thought you should start Caleb today, but that was before the Gabe news. Because again, if Gabe's healthy out
that's interesting. Do you think if Gabe is available and obviously starts, and you do have Kyle Lowry as your 6th man? Do we maybe see Caleb Martin starting instead of Kevin Love? But to your point, you didn't want to do the whole. Yeah. Spo would have gone it with Kevin either way.
Yeah, well, no. I think you mean today in Game 5 or Game 6? Yeah,
Game 5. I'm talking about Game 5. We're not moving on to Game
5. If Gabe was healthy, I think they would have started Caleb because he would have produced that energy. He would have provided the defensive spark, and he's not costing them.
And you would have had Lowry off the bench.
Right.
That's interesting. I had not thought about it. Friend of the show, Rowan Nudcarney, said, texted me saying, like, because we were texting about this exact issue, like what's going on here? Why not bring Kevin Love off of the bench as your backup 5? Zeller can't be playing, blah blah blah. Right. And he said that Spo always kind of waits one game too long to change the starters. And I thought that was an interesting observation. It's not one that I disagree with either. The other coach that I used to cover, Steve Kerr, it always felt like he went a game too early changing the starters sometimes. Like he was almost too eager to make changes to his starting lineup. So I don't know what the sweet spot is. But again, this one was obviously not working after the blowout loss against Game 4. I know you want to do the Haywood Highsmith thing.
Well, it's how he started the third quarter. So I think we've already seen the transition. The combination of the zone defense. I think
that's too cute too.
Well, the combination of the zone defense and Haywood Highsmith, I think, was something positive. If you're going to look for positives in Game 5, and there weren't many,
Highsmith was great.
I think it's the Highsmith with the great. The zone worked to flummox even Boston starters, but by that point, it was too little, too late. They were playing catch up. Their 3-point shooting wasn't either not enough volume to be able to even out the difference, and I think that's your problem. But if you start that way, and again, I think the two-way nature, the fact that you're relying too much on your 3 best defenders to be your 3 best scorers is a concern. You could put Haywood Highsmith, just let him loose to be a mad dog on defense, harass the hell out of Tatum, throw an elbow, get in foul trouble. I don't give a damn.
His matchup data. I mean, his matchup data on Tatum in the regular season was very positive for Miami. I want to get back to the blame pie thing. I think we're going to explore the Haywood Highsmith option a little bit more in depth in the next segment. But
that's fair.
So Spo in terms of the
a slice for being too cute.
I was thinking 3. I thought he was like out coached. I thought that was the death knell. As soon as you kept with that starting lineup, I was like,
you can't.
This thing might be over.
I don't know. That's unfair because I think he's lost 2 starters, and I don't know that you can. Yeah.
All right.
And Gabe Vincent and 2 slices. I guess split the difference. That's
2
fine.
slices. Okay.
Let's go to Bam.
That's 3 to Jimmy, 3 to Bam, 2 to Lowry, 2 to Spo. Let's talk about Bam.
Yeah, that's I don't know exactly what's going on. They've been more physical. I know that probably again, as I've mentioned before, some of the possessions there where he probably should have gotten a call his way, but he looks a little lost. He looks a little thrown off, and his ball handling has been horrific. I don't know what happened. If he used up all of his energy on that spin move on Jaylen Brown in Game 3, and from that point forward, he can't. He looks like a 90-year-old man dribbling the ball. He looks like Kyle Lowry at his worst day.
Bam Adebayo has great hands. He catches everything. He couldn't catch a beach ball today. Like, I don't know what was it wasn't even just the forced turnovers. It was the unforced things. Just trying to find him on the roll, trying to find him. Look, I get that the Celtics did a very good job cluttering the paint, showing him arms and limbs and bodies and kind of maybe getting in his face, but he usually catches the basketball in that spot. And there was like 2 or 3 times where he just like got fingers on it and that was it. Like never any sort of real possession of the basketball. And that was the thing that was baffling to me. It wasn't even an energy thing. It was just the fact that he forgot how to catch the ball. You know, like I don't know what happened with Bam Adebayo. I thought for sure we were getting a big Bam game in this one, David. I thought for sure with the way that he played in Game 4, which was not nearly as bad as he played in Game 5. But usually in like a ho-hum game, he'll come and after he's challenged the way that I thought he was challenged after Game 4, he'll come out and go gangbusters. And I don't even think it was a lack of trying. I don't think this was like
they were looking to get it going early. They were looking to get it going.
But in the worst spots, I tweeted this during the game, like they weren't doing him any favors. Like, why are you trying to post Bam up? That's not his game. He's never been a post-up guy.
Well, I mean,
they didn't figure it out until the second half.
Yeah, the post-up could lead to the spin mover. It could lead to a little juke,
but it's always on the run. Like I'm talking about, like I'm not saying just like not in the post at all. I'm talking about like he usually is on the move, getting into the post, and then he hits Jaylen Brown with the spin move, right? Like that was all in motion. That was ballet. This was just trying to brute force stuff, and just like, you know. I've never really seen the Heat try to do that with him, and it was curious that they were trying to do it in this one.
Yeah, 3 turnovers in the first quarter, only 2 of 3 attempts, and then they tried to go to him more often in the second quarter, looking to get him going. I mean, to anything, if you're going to counter, that Spo kind of screwed the pooch a little bit, and I don't disagree with that. I think the game plan was sound. Go to Bam, get him going early, see if you can get it going. 1 of 6 in the second quarter, 3 of 9 in the first half. That's not enough. That's not good enough. That's not going to get it done.
And missing some shots at the rim that he usually makes too.
Yes.
Just like in Game 4.
Follow-up shots, off the rebound. Even when he had that jumper looking, he was uncomfortable with it, a little too hesitant. And it's not, the thing I pointed out in the past is that if you're putting a bigger center like a Brook Lopez or even a Nikola Jokic, if you're looking that far ahead, which seems a little unlikely at this point or unrealistic, you also have to consider the fact that I think he looked shaky, like hesitant. And I think that's credit to Boston. They've gotten into Miami's head in the
sure.
way that Miami was in
Well, they
Boston's
bothered him.
head over the first 3 games. They were bothering him. He was kind of hearing footsteps, the analogy from football. He thought somebody was going to be there, and I think he was trying to roll into that spin move or try to get something going at the rim a little too quickly where he didn't have full possession of the ball, just bobbling it. And I think a part of that is the Boston's defense is really, really good. It's the level of offense that we saw from this team early in the season, and then the kind of type of defense that they showed late in last season when they were such a good defensive juggernaut. And I think it's a bad combination. And now they have confidence. Now they're feeling it a little bit. I don't know how things are going to change in game 6. I don't know if they can take Boston out of their comfort zone while trying to establish themselves. I think a lot of it has to do with Bam. I think some of it has to do with Gabe. And I think a big chunk of that has to go with Jimmy Butler, who just looks like a shell of himself. I think the injury concerns are starting to crop up. They weren't as noticeable, but he has not been dominant in this series. He's been effective, and that's been enough because everybody else has got it going. The concerns about Jimmy on the Boston side, while they were discombobulated, were enough so that Jimmy could do just enough to carry this team and to help get everybody else going. That's not the case. They've shut everybody else down, and they're making Jimmy work for every bucket, and he's just not able to score with ease.
Putting Tatum on him has changed the series. Boston doubling him here and there opportunistically has changed the series, and now we're 2 series in, basically, of Jimmy Butler sort of struggling with double teams, and it's all kind of happened because of the double teams, but also since hurting that right ankle. And I have to wonder if there's more going on with that ankle than he's letting on, because he just does not look the same as he does or as he did in that Milwaukee Bucks series. And so I am concerned about Jimmy Butler, his health, and what else he has to give. You can't be singing in the post-game press conference after game 4 and then come out with a goose egg like you did tonight.
Can't be smiling in game 5. He was smiling in game 5. Like, even now they're getting.
I don't have a problem with him smiling. I have no problem with the guy smiling. I don't. But I like to say, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to go on the road and win it. Like that. I know that's Jimmy's MO. That's his leadership style, like we talked about with Howard Beck.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
But he didn't back it up, man. Like, not even. I thought we would see more, and just from the get-go, just absent. Like it felt like him and Jason Tatum have body swapped, right? Because that was the problem with Tatum in the first 3 games. Is like, is this guy even really out there? And Jimmy Butler, it kind of felt like that tonight. So 3 slices of blame pie for him as well. One player's performance could trigger a starting lineup change for game 6. We'll tell you who it is next. But first, today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. Look, I look better and I feel great wearing Bird Dogs. Their stretchy fabric makes my legs look great, and they're comfier than my other shorts and my other pants. They give me the freedom to wear one pair of shorts on the golf course, to a meeting, at a pool, or on a date, or just hanging out with some friends. Look, we've got a couple of pairs. They sent them to us, full disclosure, and I already owned a few pairs of Bird Dogs even before they sent them to us, and now I've got like 4 or 5 pairs of these shorts. And in this Miami weather, man, I wear them everywhere. I wear them out just to go get some groceries. I wear them walking around downtown. I'll wear them to my parents' house and go in their pool. I love these things. So I highly recommend you try these. You can do so at birddogs.com. And if you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, when you enter the promo code LockedOnNBA, they're going to throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. It's Bird Dogs. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Reach Locked On Heat on Twitter, Instagram, email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions on Twitter using that hashtag AskLOHeat every day. We're going to be back Saturday night with a recap of Game 6. Hopefully, the last time we talk about this series. We'll see. But this question comes from Addie Jones Jr., who writes in, what can we do differently on the defensive end? I don't expect Boston to keep shooting this well, but they're too comfortable. David, I said in the beginning, though, but I do expect Boston to keep shooting this well.
That's fair. I think it could be somewhere. The thing isn't even that they're going to be shooting this well. It's the lack of lack of contesting from Miami side of things. They're scrambling now. They don't look comfortable. And I don't know if it's the personnel. I don't know if they don't seem to be communicating at the same level that they were.
The transition stuff has been really sloppy. And obviously the turnovers, the more turnovers you have, the more sloppy transition opportunities there are. But yeah, I'm with you. It looks discombobulated.
Can I get to my lineup change now?
Sure.
Because I think he's the difference. I really do.
Okay.
I keep getting to this point. I mean, and I know maybe I'm clutching at straws here, and I don't think that anybody else has any other option right now. But it's just you're asking so much of Jimmy, Bam, Caleb. You throw Haywood out there, let him go crazy. I think he starts game 6. I think you bring him and Gabe back into the starting lineup if he's healthy, assuming that that's the case. And I think that will be, considering he was such a late scratch. He should only get better from here with 2 more days of rest. And you start Haywood and have him harass Tatum, be physical with him. I think it'll make the difference. I think his closeouts on 3-point shots was significantly better. I mean, I don't think you have to worry. Jimmy freelances a little bit too much. As great a defender as he is, sometimes there were still too many freelances there. I think Haywood is not a better defender by any stretch, but I think he is better for this particular job of just saying, you know what, go out there, stick to your man. Don't let Tatum get hot. And I think he'll be that much more effectively. And
he also has fresh legs.
He also has fresh
as opposed to everybody else. He's barely played in these playoffs. He played 36 minutes tonight in a blowout and was still a +2.
He won't get killed on switches.
No.
He can defend up to Horford. He can defend down if Smart has the ball.
He can make that corner 3 on offense.
He can make that corner 3. Again, that's any kind of found money. You don't even worry about the offense. The offense has to come from everybody else. For Highsmith, all I want is for him to be a defensive presence to start the game and to make Boston uncomfortable. Because you do that, again, we've seen this recipe so often for Miami through the regular season, through the playoffs. Bring it back into the mud. Slow them down. You cannot let them get that hot start that they did today where they're feeling cocky. You've got Marcus Smart throwing his head back. You've got Horford talking shit. You've got Tatum and Jaylen Brown looking like an all-star. You know, he is, but he's been very much not an all-star for the first 3 games of the series, and now he's back. You have to be able to challenge them to some degree. And right now, I think Haywood might be Miami's best option. I know it seems like this is pathetic to look for another undrafted player. I can just hear it now. But again, you're asking for a lot when your starting scorer, best scorer in Tyler Hero's out, when Jimmy looks uncomfortable, when Bam's being challenged more defensively, et cetera. So I don't know.
I'm with you with taking Kevin Love out of the starting lineup. I don't care that the fact that the option is undrafted, because all of Miami's options at this point are undrafted. There's no first round picks to choose from on the bench that are just like sitting there. So look, I worry that it's a little too much for Haywood Highsmith on that stage. It's just a lot. He wasn't playing in this series for a
comfortable
reason.
Tonight.
Sure. Okay. It was sort of like, go out there, do what you can in a blowout. Like, the game was already over. It's a lot less.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
That game was over.
No, it wasn't. Like he played before that. He played before that, and again,
like I said, this game was over in the first quarter. David, everybody could see it.
You're right, but you try to cut it down again. If Jimmy and Bam hit a couple more shots, if Max hits one of those patented 3-pointers that seems to be missing, if Kyle hits a couple of shots, it's much more realistic. You cut the game to 12, and then Jimmy gets energized. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. I can take over these stretches." I don't know. We'll never know. It's the game's over. There's no even
so I'm not disagreeing that Haywood Highsmith should play in this series. I just don't. I think it might be a little dramatic to move him into this. If you're going to make that starting lineup change that Spo's been so reluctant to do, and now I think you have to do it. Like, there is no excuse. And he basically already did it, right? Like you said, you start the second half with Haywood Highsmith at the 4. You've basically already admitted, all right, we're probably going to change the starting lineup going into game 5. And I think you're onto something when you say if Gabe Vincent were available, maybe it does look a little bit different. Maybe it is Caleb starting at the 4. Whatever. I am a little bit less optimistic that Gabe Vincent is going to be available for game 6 than you are. So that is something to monitor these next couple of days, that ankle, over these next 48 hours. But and I do think you're going to end up being right. I think based on just what we saw in that second half, and if Gabe is not available, I think you'll be right. I think Haywood Highsmith will probably start at the 4. I am 99% sure that Kevin Love will not be starting game 6.
That's fair.
I think it should be Caleb Martin, and I don't care about the wearing down this and that and the other. I don't care. Start your best 5, put them out there. This game is too important. And that goes to our next question. RGV Ghost writes in, how panicked are we after this game? I think the panic meter, I asked you this, I didn't answer it in the first segment, David.
Yep.
The panic meter is at a 9 right now.
Wow.
It's at a 9. You got outplayed completely. The Celtics are the better team in this series right now. They are. They just are. And I know you're the team with the 3-2 lead, but you just lost the last 2, and game 7 is in Boston. The Celtics have the advantage right now. They have all the momentum in the world. This game 6 is a must win. This is your game 7 if you're Miami. If you lose this, forget it. Forget it. And I think I picked the Heat in 7.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you had them in 6 and I had them in 7.
They're winning.
I picked the Heat in 7.
They're winning game 6. I'm sticking to that.
I hope you're right. And I
don't hope. I know I'm right. I know they're going to win it.
Then what are we even talking about?
I don't.
You already know
it's going to happen.
Right.
It's going to happen. Like, we're doing our recap because we have to. I'm confident they're going to win in 6. They're going to win. This team has gone through too much and been through too much over the course of the postseason for them to just throw up all over themselves the way they did for 3 consecutive games. They're not going to do. They don't want to go back to Boston. I think they'll.
What gives you that confidence? Because Jimmy Butler has not looked the same since rolling his ankle. Okay, he hasn't. Right, and we've kind of been putting it under the rug and not talking about it because it hasn't mattered. Frankly, it has not mattered. It matters now. Jimmy Butler doesn't look the same. Bam looks out of sorts. This has been a bad couple of games for Bam Adebayo. If the 3-point shooting is not where it needs to be, and by the way, they shot 39% from 3 tonight. That's a very good rate. They only got up 23 3-pointers.
I've seen this point a lot, and I happen to agree with it. If somebody had told you before the series had started that going back into Miami at game 6, I'm sorry?
I hate that as a
answer the question, though. If somebody had told you going into the series, before the series started, that Miami was going back to game 6 with a 3-2 series lead, how would you have felt?
Of course you feel good about that.
That's right. That's David, all that matters.
Subtracts all the context. I hate that hypothetical as a framing device.
It works because I think they can. It does. They have answers.
Context. You can't.
They have answers.
All the context.
They have answers.
Do they, or all their answers injured? That's my question. All the answers are hurt. Well, Jimmy Butler is hurt. Gabe Vincent, I don't know if he's going to play in the game. All their answers are hurt. Tyler Hero has been hurt. Their answers are injured. They don't have. I don't know that they. That's why my panic meter is at a 9. I don't know that they have the answers. I don't know that they have the answers against this Celtics team. Against the Knicks, an average Knicks team.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
You got the answers. This Celtics team is too good.
I don't want to give them. I give them plenty of credit, and
they're awesome. They're a good basketball team.
I'm not taking anything away from that. I still think Miami can change things up in game 6 to keep them from feeling the momentum. And I feel like if you punch them early on, or at least keep them from getting hot, that's a pretty big gap, and yet also both very important. I think they'll show some of the same weaknesses that they showed in the first 3 games, especially when they're back in Miami. I think this is why you hope for home court advantage, right? Miami stole home court advantage. They've continued to do so. They're in a good spot. Yes, if they lose game 6, I'll be the first to admit I was dead wrong and the series is over and the Heat are going to make the wrong kind of history. I will be the first to admit that. But I think Miami has just enough momentum, just enough spirit, just enough something. And look, I mean, we've talked about this series, this team throughout this whole playoff run. So much of what they've done is inexplicable. It's all a matter of just, man, they've got the guts, they've got the balls, they've got the willingness to go out and do whatever is necessary. And I still think they've got just enough for a game 6 miracle in Miami, where we'll see the banner dropping.
I really hope it does not take a miracle to win game 6, because if it takes a miracle, then they're in a lot of trouble. I tend to agree with you. I do. We have seen enough from this Heat team that game 6 feels like that's the one. But it is a must win. If there's ever been a must win that's not a game 7, it's this one, because this is Miami's game 7. You lose this one, you've given home court back to Boston completely. And game 7 is in Boston, where the Heat, I'm not even sure they got off the plane based on how this game played out. But that game 6 is Saturday night. We'll be there to recap and post game for you. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast app. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it, Wes.